I went into the red a few times, but again, it was for me to support my community, people I love and enjoy, and consistently support, throughout their personal and gaming lives. Which again, with community, like Benny and I are a family of 5. It was, I wasn't going to find a babysitter for my kids. My kids were at every tournament. They got to know all the players. Some of the players they ended up calling uncle.
Hello, and welcome to the Absolute Guard podcast. We're a competitive fighting game community podcast examining history and current events from the lens of the Arizona grassroots scene.
Yes, welcome. This is episode 83. My name is Benny, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, John. And today we have a special guest, my beautiful wife, Mary.
Hi.
Hi, Mary.
How's it going?
I'm good. A little crazy, but good.
Yeah, so this all came about. I mean, we've been wanting to talk to her for a little bit on the podcast. We've had your wife on the show a couple times, talking with her experience about being a player. Mary here is not as much of a player, more of kind of a community support, TO and bracket runner, / cook / everything else.
I'm just an advocate. I'm a big community advocate.
Yeah, that's a good way. That's a great way to put it, actually.
You have been featured on stream as a player, though, at one time.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about
that
at some point.
We'll talk about that a little bit later.
But she could still be classified as a player. We'll let the audience decide at the end of the show, huh?
Yeah. So like I said, we've been talking about having her on the show for a while, and then after one of our recent episodes, we all went out to dinner, and then while we were out eating and drinking and stuff, she got on her little soapbox and started talking, and John was like, "Oh man, we really should have her on the podcast."
Yep.
So we finally figured it out. We've got another 2-parter here for you. So this will be our second 2-parter. The last one was with Saber. So this one, we'll have a 2-part show for you guys. We've got a little bit to cover in part 1 that we've kind of broken down, and then part 2 will kind of be broaching a kind of a different subject.
Cool.
Yeah. So as is customary, when we have somebody new, we usually try to get to know a little bit about them. So if you just want to kind of introduce yourself, honey, and then kind of like your gamer tag, and I mean I can elaborate on that too, since that kind of came about because of me.
Oh my gosh! So I'm Mary. Everybody has seen me as Benny's wife. Have a story about that too, but been with the community starting with AKG and then into AZ. Mostly just supportive. So, as John said, I have played.
Yeah.
I was very ambitious with SF4 with Cammy. I just fell in love with character and was like, okay, I'm always in the back end. I'm going to do it. I'm going to invest time. I'm going to learn my character, and I crumped. We'll get into that later. Again, uberly love my community because when I did crump, nobody talked me down. Nobody said I sucked. It was very supportive, and that's all you ever want. That's all I ever do, honestly. And I feel like I have a bunch of, I can't say big brothers because I know I'm older than many of you, aside from our OG community, but again, very supportive. My history is I am mostly been on the back end, being a TO, organizing, pretty much promoting events as much as possible. I'm kind of that middle person that everybody knows one way or another, whether you are a TO, whether you're a player. I'm pretty much that middle person of like, oh, do you know so-and-so? Oh, I'm like, yeah, I do. Let me set something up. In fact, that's actually how I set up quite a few money matches in Vegas, or got people to meet some of our AZ community, because a lot of AKG knew about Saber or knew about Angelic, and they were like, wait, you know them? And I'm like, yeah, I do. We're family.
Yeah.
So, I like being that person. I love, yeah, best word for me is advocate for the community, because a lot of people think all you guys do is sit and play games. They don't realize that you have families, you have loved ones, you have lives.
Cheers.
I
Yeah.
just kind of pointed out,
I
there's more to you than the character that you're playing.
I think about like your relationship with the community, and one could call you the puppet master, Mary, where you're pulling the strings behind the scenes a lot of times, whether it's relationship like keep building relationships or bridging relationships between different scenes, or bringing us all together with a nice meal. I also saw Dune recently, and that makes me think of like the Bene Gesserit without the evil part. Because like they do the thing where they stage like a big fight for the one of the antagonists, right? So I'm like, oh, that's like Betty. She's a fight promoter for the champion of Arrakis or whatever.
I cannot say I don't do that. I really can't say
minus
that
the
I don't
evil
do
part.
that. Like,
yeah, minus the evil
yes,
part.
minus the evil part. It's
and
all
the
with good
eugenics part.
intentions.
Yeah.
A lot of the times, like I'll be, listening in on certain conversations when people are like, "Oh, I just can't approach that person," and I'll be like, "Actually, you can."
Yeah.
If you're willing to learn or listen and receive critique, good or bad, by all means, start up a conversation. And, sometimes I will pull one of you guys aside and be like, oh, hey, so-and-so was really watching your match and they, wanted to get some ideas off of you, blah, blah, blah. It starts the conversation and I walk away. And then the person doesn't even realize who they were talking to. Believe it or not, there's a lot of stories like that where they're like, I don't even know who I was talking to, but for whatever reason, we just started talking. I'm like, back at me, walk away.
Yes.
Watch matches.
Exactly. Yeah. So kind of her introduction and kind of integration in the community kind of started for selfish reasons for both of us, and mainly because like at the time we were living in Alaska and I'd play in these tournaments on Sundays, and I'd say I don't know if there was ever a time. Well, I mean, sure, there's probably 20 people. I'd say maybe that was the max. Maybe, occasionally we get the outlier, right? But we were a real close-knit kind of community, so things were very, very lax. So we'd run a tournament, and like, in all honesty, it should have been done 2 hours, 2.5 hours tops. And we would run these tournaments. I want to say 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and then we'd be done at like 7 or 8, sometimes longer than that if we ran later. And I was working in the morning, and like she was pregnant at the time, and yeah, and I would, I'd be coming home late, or she'd be messaging me, when are you coming home? Oh yeah, we're still running in the bracket. And like I said, if you've run tournaments, a 16, 20-man bracket, like you can get that done pretty quickly, under 2 hours for sure.
It's so pretext to that. Everybody knows Benny started in SF due to a radio advertisement going to a tournament. And then finally he heard about a community starting tournament, like really small tournaments at a play-in trade in Anchorage. And at one point he went to like 1 or 2, and then he's like, hey, do you guys just want to come with me? It shouldn't take that long. And I'm like, sure. Okay, I'm very pregnant at this time. I'm about,
yeah, because this was late 2009.
Yeah, I was probably about 5 or 6 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm very big, very, very irritable. And Kaya and Maymay, for those of you know, are 2 older ones. They were about 5 and 3, 5 and 2, 5 and 3.
No, that would have been 09.
Oh, okay.
So I've been six.
Six.
Yeah, six and
4.
yeah, 6-4.
6-4.
Yeah,
So,
so you had your hands full. It sounds like.
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, to say the
So,
least. Yeah,
to
to
say
say
the least, but
Yeah.
again, if any of you have met them, the way they are now is pretty much how they were as children, or as young children.
Yeah.
We go to a play and trade. Benny does not introduce me. This is how laser focused my husband can be in competition.
Uh-huh.
We get there, everybody knows him. Hey, Grandmaster B, blah, 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 blah. Me and the kids are in the background. Nothing. Finally, I don't get introduced to anyone until everybody is obviously sees that I am his wife with children, because he let everybody know he's married with children.
Uh-huh.
Finally, the youngest member at the time comes up to me. You've had him on the show, Banksters, Banky. He comes up to me and he's like, "Okay, I cannot call you Benny's wife. What is your name?" And I finally introduce him, and that was my introduction into the community. Literally, was Mary. I'm Marion. You know, he's like, "Okay, great," because all of us were just kind of calling you Benny's wife and referring to you as Benny's wife, and it was kind of getting irritating. So I had to come. And that's how I started talking to more of the members of AKG and learning the ins and outs of running a tournament, kind of just watching and observing.
Sure.
And sometimes asking questions. By, I think just like after a month of going to those tournaments, we finally went to a tournament at Friendly Fire. You've already heard the backstory in that one.
Play and trade was for a few months. That
Was
started.
it a few months?
Yeah, that started. Oh, yeah, it would have been a couple months at least that we were there, because that was like the end of 2009. Because I started first tournament I joined was like April 2009. It was kind of a lull period where like I would like communicate. I think we had forums at the time, and like I trying to communicate with people there, play online. I don't remember doing a lot of like offline stuff between like the summertime and stuff. And then they were like, "Hey, we're gonna do rand bets in the fall at this play and trade," and then that's when that started. Yeah, I'd say it went for a couple months because I don't remember being at the Friendly Fire at the local like gaming land place until I want to say early 2010, if that.
Oh yeah, because we already had G.
Yeah. So
That's true.
yeah, so our son was born in October of that year, later that year, and
2000. Yeah.
so we were at the play and trade for I want to say a couple months while that ran back season kind of played itself out, and then when they started like wanting to do other events, that would have been I'm pretty sure like early 2010.
Yeah, that's when one of our other players, AKG Highlander, started a tournament at Friendly Fire. We went to that. I think I went to that one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure who was the point man for like doing things at that exact.
It was Highlander,
moment, but it was like that's kind of when the whole lax and sessions kind of started happening, because like we would meet up, everybody's looking to play a tournament and everything like that, but then in the middle of the tournament, people would just kind of like up and leave. They'd go and get food. They'd go and leave and pick somebody up and want to bring them over there, for whatever reason. Like somebody would be like, "Hey, where's so and so?" "Oh, he just left." And instead of like DQing them like like any normal tournament, because everybody was pretty buddy, it was just like, okay, we'll just wait till he gets back. So we're all just kind of biding our time and playing games or whatever, finding things to do, getting food ourselves or whatever. And that's how things are run.
It was not a boys club per se, but they kind of treated it like that.
Okay. So like the narrative here is like you got to know the fighting game community first before you started going in and running the tournaments, as opposed to like being an outsider, being like, I can do better than these guys, right? Like you spent time with them, like learning what they were doing, and then trying to like seeing what the problem actually was and trying to solve a problem, as opposed to being an alien coming in and
you have to realize like
abducting one of the
being a massage therapist. Being a massage therapist, which a lot of them knew, I run I run my career like my own business. So of course, like even with hobbies, I like to be very organized.
Mhm.
You know, Benny knows this. I can be a little controlling.
You're used to massaging everybody and controlling and contorting people's bodies, right?
Yeah. No, that's also the reason why I don't really work on Benny, because even though he like tells me the pressure I'm using is too much, he's like, I'm like, I don't listen to my
Yeah.
own
She knows what's best.
to my own clients. I will listen. I'll give that buffer, but not to my family. My family doesn't get a buffer because I don't get paid, so
So
it's
she
my
gets
way
to
or
do
the
it how she
highway.
wants to.
Yeah.
And it
I
was pretty much the same thing with the community.
I did want to mention too, like we were talking a lot about your intro and your role in the community earlier. I do think that you give the best hugs in the local community here. So I wonder if that has to do with the massage therapy background.
It does. It does, actually. There's just a portion of my brain that the moment I hug somebody, it just kind of like I'll start actually. I try not to start figuring out where your tension spots are. In all honesty, but it does happen. It does happen.
That's kind of like how Benny plays Street Fighter. He's like, what normal annoys them the most? And then let me press on
It's
it a
true.
lot.
So a few months of those tournaments went on, and like I said, I knew the contact with the place we were having those tournaments. So I did find a middle person. I was so fed up. There was one time Benny was out till almost 2 a.m. and here I
Was
am.
it that late?
Yeah.
I don't think it was
almost
that
2
late.
a.m.
I could think maybe like 11 or midnight because I had to work at like 5 in the morning.
No,
I don't
this
think
was on a day you had an off time.
I don't know.
And it was
I don't
just
remember that then.
Dude, interviewing a married couple is the best thing ever. This is awesome.
Yeah,
I feel
don't
like you
remember
guys
that
are
at
going to
all.
offer me candy or something.
that was so mean. But okay, to me maybe it was like really late because I'm dealing with an infant and our two
Yeah.
our two girls at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's a lot.
Yeah.
Especially since after G was born, I went back to work.
Yeah.
So just a lot. So I took it upon myself. I literally trolled Benny's Facebook for Highlander's contact to
Fair.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, so this is kind of like almost like a combo deal because like, I was hearing it from her and then like I was kind of relaying that to the community and telling them, hey, like there's no reason that we should be running tournaments that are taking this long, right? And it's not fair for the people, including myself, but I'm sure that there were other people in the community that felt the same way but didn't feel like speaking up about it for whatever reason. Because I mean, it's hostility, right? Like you don't want to be the person to bring that up, right? And like she said, we're like the older people in the community, so I'm sure there were other people that who might have been getting stuff from their parents or whoever was taking care of them, saying, "Hey, what's taking you so long?" Or maybe they were just getting personally frustrated with things taking long, and they just didn't want to express those feelings about it. So
Sure.
like like we said, like her getting on me about that, me also personally like feeling, hey, I gotta wake up early in the morning. Like we can't be keep running these tournaments this long, right? And that's kind of how that whole thing kind of stemmed about. It was like we were just like, hey, we need to get a handle on these things and get things, run the ship tighter, basically.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So when
But
you say run the ship, like, are you saying like it was the same event series that you were going to, or did you guys start up a new event series, or like what
no,
did that look like?
No, we kind of like took the mantle on things and like so I won't take credit for doing everything because it was more just like kind of the planning part and kind of like the enforcement of making sure people were there, like DQing people in that sense.
mhm.
Like there was other people that were running stream. The venue was obviously the the venue hosts, that kind of stuff. So it's not like we were just doing this on our own somewhere else. We were still using that same venue.
Okay.
I had other people running the stream, and it was just like, hey, I'm gonna take point on this if this is cool, and this is what we want to do. And like, so
That was actually after our first tournament. Like I said, I got the contact for Highlander. Highlander put me through to the venue owner, and he's like, "Hey, whatever you want to do, just give me the dates." And so I asked Benny. I'm like, "All right, I got in contact with the venue owner, and he's gonna charge us $3 per person to use the venue.
yeah,
$3.
Yeah, it's
$3 per
pretty low,
entry."
pretty low for
Hey, you
nowadays, but
heard the
back then.
story of the
yeah,
shitty
yeah,
friendly fire.
yeah. We touched on that when we interviewed Banky in terms of like what the owner of Friendly Fire ended up being, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's kind of like where we started. Like, we laid the groundwork for kind of like what we wanted to do, and kind of guidelines on like, hey, we need you to either pre-register or
Mhm.
give somebody a heads up, call or text them, let us know what's going on if you're going to be late, you know, uh, those kind of situations.
Again,
S-
for
Were
running
you, were-
tournaments, being in the community, Benny was always up to date on the way different tournaments were run, whether it was a major or a minor. So once we realized you could pre-register, we had them pre-register, but we had them pay when they got to the venue. Obviously, this was how many years ago?
Yeah,
15 years ago. So
almost 50.
not taking credit card payments yet.
Sure.
And once that started, we just got really more organized. I started, asking people, hey, can you run this bracket? We started seeding. We started, after a while, one incident threw me so much that I finally instilled a 2-minute warning. If I couldn't get you to your match, or if I haven't heard anything, I told Benny, I'm like, I want to instill a 2-minute penalty. Like, I don't care.
If I'm not mistaken, I think we did that from the start. Like,
No, we didn't start it.
well, no, I mean,
It
not
was-
just that. It was just like, because I remember, so the very first event that we ran, like we ran into some kind of growing pains and troubles with that because one of our top players um, was not very communicative with his with his intentions to be late, and so we weren't aware that he was gonna be late. So we ended up basically kind of starting the bracket without him, and then when he arrived, he was kind of
in
upset.
losers, yeah.
I don't even think we put him in losers, or I don't know. It's been so long, but either way, he was upset about the situation, and not being able to be. I don't think he was in the bracket. That's what I remember.
No, I had heard from one of his contacts because he was contacting somebody at the tournament. He had decided to go to a choral
It
get
doesn't matter. It
together.
doesn't matter what it was. It was something else.
Anyways, he had a prior engagement. He thought he was going to make it. He stayed longer. Everybody's like, well, what are we going to do? And I'm like, DQ. Everybody's like, are you sure? I'm like, DQ. Next thing I know, losers bracket. They're like, he's still not here. I'm like, well, then he's out. That's it. Benny was already busy, being a TO, but also being a player. It hit Facebook because he was complaining and everything. And Benny was like, sorry, dude, this is my tournament. This is what we did. And I finally had to make a comment like, it wasn't Benny's call, it was mine. Obviously, because I'm Mama Bear, he didn't say anything after that.
That's awesome. Okay. Yeah, because like realistically, like if someone's gonna be so late that they would get DQ'd twice, like once from winners to losers and losers to out of the tournament, then I don't know. What was striking to me at least was that there used to be, I think, this kind of belief that the top players could do everything in the community, like run the tournaments as well as place high in the tournaments because the community was small. Like, and I say this like in a general sense. I imagine every local community started this way too, where it was just there just wasn't a ton of people, and so it fell on the top players because they liked the game, and they got you got to really like the game if you're starting it from scratch like that, you know. Um, but I think over the years, particularly around the era that we all started playing or being involved in the community at least, um, yeah. So I'm gonna mark this here. There's like some really bad feedback from it's like a high pitched squeal or something. Is it like a fan or
Yeah, I think it's a fan that's still
okay?
stuttering.
Yeah, that just like went
That's good.
active. So give me a sec to mark that here, and I will cut that out. Cool. All right. So yeah, starting it up again here. Yeah, there just was a period of time where I think tournament organizers started becoming like you started having specialty roles as tournament organizers, and it was less so about who was the best player. And I say that more from like a tribalist standpoint or like a tribal rules kind of standpoint, where people just automatically thought we should wait for the top player, right? But I
Exactly.
think
Yeah, that
that
top player privilege kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah, and that notion I think is much less prevalent today, partly because of the groundwork that was laid as like it's just a community, it's a politeness thing at the end of the day. If you have a group
Yeah.
of people that are waiting for you and you keep them waiting, then why do you get to bitch about it, you know?
Yeah.
So like but I would say that back in those times, I think that that position was probably less well received than it would be today, if anything.
Yeah.
No, that's true.
Yeah, there was definitely some kind of top player privilege stuff going on in terms of that. Like they were just kind of expecting that we would wait for them. And then, like I said, like you have to think about how things were prior to us kind of taking the mantle, right? It was like things were very lax, and that's what people were used to. And that,
Mhm.
we had to kind of put our foot down and just say, "Hey, we're not going to stand for this anymore because of the reasons that we've explained before. Was things were
Sure.
running too late, running so long. Like, it's disrespectful to not just me and whatever. It's disrespectful to everybody that shows up on time and is here to play when they're supposed to,
Yeah.
right? And like you said, like one person shouldn't trump everybody else's time and and all that stuff.
Yeah, so after that tournament and after instilling a few rules and then everybody getting hyped for Evo, that's when I was like, all right, so we're going to start running these tournaments as if this is a major. You guys want to go to a major? We're going to run it like a major. It's local, but we'll instill the same rules. So expect, if your controller doesn't work, and yeah, I'm sorry, can't do anything about that. You know, we really had to be harsh, and a lot of people were like, "This is just a local." I'm like, tough. I, everybody wants to be serious in this community, and I'm accommodating that. You don't want to be a serious player, then that's okay. Just realize that these are going to be the tournament rules going forward.
Yeah, like she said, she was talking about that kind of 2-minute rule to kind of check in, and it's like
Sure.
the venue was not very large. Like it was basically like the kind of the TGZ back room, the gaming zone's back room. It's not a
Mhm.
large place, so like there's absolutely no reason that anybody shouldn't have been prepared to play. Like granted, like if you're in the bathroom, that's one thing. If you're taking a smoke break right outside where we can see you, that's another thing. That's perfectly fine. But this whole like, I'm gonna go leave and go grab some food to eat, whether that was across the street or whatever. We're just like, no, like we're trying to get things done.
Sure. Yeah, and like I'm trying to when we recount a lot of the history, I think for this stuff like the negative incidents I think tend to be more story worthy, but like just to get a kind of a temperature of like your support from the community at this time, like were people happy that these new rules were coming into play overall outside of exceptions, or was it more like this had to be like genuine cultural shift for the
So we
AK community?
actually have picture proof that it actually grew more because a majority of our scene was much younger than me and Benny. They were still high school students. So
Oh,
since we were
so they had a
running a
real
tighter
reason.
ship,
Yeah.
yeah, since we were running a tighter ship, they could actually be home at a decent hour. Parents would actually allow them to go to tournaments because they wouldn't be home, they wouldn't be out past like 11. A lot of our tournaments were done about 10.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, it might have been sooner than that. I don't know.
Or sooner. It really kind of depended on when we decided our start time was going to be.
Actually, looking at this, so I decided to pull up Facebook and kind of look through like the past events that I've hosted,
Oh my
and I
god.
think our timeline might actually be off by a year. 'Cause
Yeah.
it looks like the first event we started was actually April of 2011, so that would have been a whole year afterwards. Actually,
Okay.
I don't know. Now that I think about it, I think that all kind of lines up now because the top player that I was talking about had done really well at Evo in 2010. Like he had tied for 13th. So,
Mhm.
with that came some ego and stuff like that. So, yeah, now I think about it, that all that kind of lines up in terms of the timeline because April of 2011 would have been after Evo
Mm,
2010,
yeah.
and at that point, like he had kind of been established within our community as our best player. So
Okay.
that makes a lot more sense.
I feel like in like the local Arizona scene, like which is the experiences that I can draw from, it's pretty analogous to a lot of the history that we have here in Arizona, where anytime there's a new tournament organizer on the block, there's usually like groups of players that don't want to participate or anything like that. And so I was curious, like, were there groups within the AK scene that ended up like not coming back after you guys took over, or by and large
No.
did you just end up kind of inheriting the entirety of the scene?
No, we basically inherited kind of the entirety of the scene. Like that negative event, like I said, like it stands out because like that was probably the biggest thing that we dealt with just initially getting started.
Sure.
But once people kind of got the gist of what we were doing and understood and kind of like respected like why it is that we were doing
Hmm.
things, and I'm sure that,
Hmm.
like I said, I'm sure that there were people in the community that felt the same way and was just like, oh, finally this isn't taking hours and we're getting done at a decent time. Like everybody was pretty much on board, and even the top players that the top player that was like that, like eventually it was just like
He
you know
actually matured after that incident.
it became a thing where it was just like yeah, it's whatever, it's water under the bridge kind of thing. Like
Mhm.
this is why we're doing it, and if there was some kind of miscommunication, then it's whatever. But moving forward, like this is what we want to do, and this is why. And
Sure.
the community as a whole kind of embraced that, and we then ran with it. Because at that point, like after that, I was basically running. We were just running a monthly. Like I don't remember we did ran bets. Again until I left because I left basically less than a year after that in March of 2012. So
Mhm.
between April of 2011 is when basically we started, and then I
Mhm.
was doing basically a monthly after that.
Okay.
So I mean, I don't know if there was one every month. I'd probably say at least there was probably eight events at that within that span of a year. But yeah, we there was no real no like, oh, we're not gonna join your tournaments or whatever. There's no animosity in terms of that. Like
Oh, cool.
once everybody kind of got on board, like everybody was like, okay, this is why we're doing things, and they were on board.
And honestly, because we were so supportive of the group, that's actually when more talks of Senchicon started to come up with the ones that were in high school going into college. So, trying to make their own con and bridging other games and other interests. Um,
Yeah, I don't know. I forgot the person. I want to say it was this person. I think his name was Braxton.
mm,
Senshi-Con was basically like a anime con that had started around that same time, and I touched on this briefly in some of our other episodes where it's like, it's when I first got here to AZ, like the con tournaments were kind of seen as like an afterthought, right? Like nobody serious was going to those, right? We had community members here that were hosting events there, and they were going to be free tournaments because people were there already paying for the con, and it was more kind of like a community bridge more than anything, right?
Hmm.
So like the more serious players wouldn't attend, but for us being in Anchorage, like whoever was organizing that, they reached out to people in our community and said, "Hey, we want to run a tournament. Can you guys provide setups and whatnot and all that kind of stuff?" I wasn't really a part of that, but there were other people in our community that took the
that
reins
took
with
up
that.
plate. Yeah.
And for our small community in Anchorage, like that became basically like our major. Like it was like, hey, are you guys going to SenchiCon? Sure. What else was there for us to do in Anchorage? So
Okay.
it became a big tournament for us.
So that was like your first like experience running in something that wasn't in a local environment. Still technically local,
Exactly.
but at a bigger stage
Yeah.
essentially, right?
Yeah, it was held in the local college in like one of their main halls. And it's actually where I had like two of my best placings in a tournament. Like the first year I got fourth place, and I still remember how I lost. Like I was in the it was one of the community pillars there. It's actually Banky's oldest brother, Bo. I was playing him, and he's always been the type of person to kind of like mentor me and tell me stuff on the side of like things I should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And he was I want to say this was super. I don't know. I forget what version. I'd have to look all that stuff up. But I just remember him being in the corner, and I did like a walk up, and I was gonna Ochio him, and he neutral jumped, and he killed me, and I was just like, oh man, I was like, why did I do that? It's one of those kind of stupid moments. It's just like
Yep.
I kind of got in my own head, and
Right, for
like,
sure.
and for him to beat me, like I didn't feel bad about that. It was more like kind of just a mental thing. Like why would I do that in that particular moment? And but then the next year, like my goal was to get like third place, and I remember like we had one of our other locals. He's a big Tekken player. Was like commentating that whole day, and like his name was Josh the Myth, or JTM,
JTM.
and he's a very loud personality, and so
Oh,
everybody could
yeah.
hear the commentary in that hall that was
Without a
watching.
mic, by the way.
Yeah, no, it was with the mic.
No, I meant, but he
Even
was
then, you
mic'd
could
for the
still
stream. It's just you
Yeah,
could.
yeah, he
you
was
could
a
hear
loud
him.
guy.
Nice.
Oh my god.
So like I remember being put in losers, and as I was making the losers run, like you can hear him all over the commentary. Just he's the only one really commentating just by himself, and he's just being loud. He's like calling my name out and everything. And I ended up making my goal of getting third, and that's where I ended up. But like yeah, those are two of like my fondest memories, like playing tournaments up there.
But again, I
Nice.
kind of attribute the growth to the fact that we cared to
Yeah.
grow the scene. And it's not that we weren't ironclad. We still I still listened to the players. I still promoted the way I want, the way I knew I could from a business standpoint. Like that's why you see AKG with shirts since 2011. That's right, 2011. We've had AKG shirts.
Yeah,
They were done prior, but not consistently for Evo until then. So that was something I took up because I wanted to show the global community that local communities actually do care about each other.
Sure.
Local scenes want to support each other. When you've seen all the past global stuff, it's only sponsored teams. It doesn't have to be that way. That's not what a community is. A community is a band of people that support and nurture each other, without being paid.
yeah.
So did not make any I'm going to make it known again to anyone who was with us at that time. I made nothing.
Yeah, it was never a money making thing. Like even the TO stuff that I did, I'm sure some people were just like, oh, they're making money on the side, and I was like, man, any money that I made extra just rolled back into the community. Like I'd do like raffles or like random other things, or things like that. Like it
Sure.
all just rolled back in the community. Like if any, I mean, if I was gonna make a profit, what it was be like, oh look, we made $22 or something like that. Like yeah, we're really rolling in the dough, guys. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't anything significant. So like. Yeah, it was never anything like that.
It's the curse of being a TO. Everybody's thinking you're making money off of the tournaments and taking from the cash pot or whatever. I've heard it all, and it's
Yeah.
not true. You go into the red, and
Not to say that there's not people like that.
not
But
to say there's not people like that. I'm just saying, from my experience, I went into the red a few times, but again, it was for me to support my community, people I love and enjoy, and consistently support, throughout their personal and gaming lives. Which again, with community, like Benny and I are a family of 5. It was, I wasn't going to find a babysitter for my kids. My kids were at every tournament. They got to know all the players. Some of the players they ended up calling uncle.
Yeah. So I'll send you this. Oh man, I have like a whole album actually from that first tournament that I just found. Yeah, this is April 2011. Actually,
And Jabin, believe it or not, would sleep through an entire tournament.
Actually, no, I won't send you that. I'll send you like the Evo pictures, just in terms of the. Because granted, this was back in 2011.
Even busting out the family photo albums, I see.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah, so Evo 2011, like, again, like, so we started in April. Like, so at this point, I had run, 2 tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
2, yeah, maybe 3, depending on when Evo was. So it was July. Yeah, so I think it would have been 3. So it would have been like April, May, June, and then it was like, hey guys, we're going to Evo. I'm trying to find this group photo that we had, but maybe I don't have it. But you got to think, like, back in 2011, like, there weren't a lot of people that were like, they might have been sponsored, and I think other than like the Mad Cats people, like, they didn't really have like shirts and jerseys and things like that, right? Like, kind of putting everything together.
Yeah, if I could soapbox briefly, because there's this. I want to set the stage for this time period because nowadays we accept moneyed interests and people looking for profit pretty freely in the tournament in the tournament scene, and it's more transparent in that regard. Like the people that are making a ton of money off this scene, they are, and they don't really take any effort to hide it. But the old FGC, which is or rather the era that we started in, like it was right on that shift from when things were looking to go from hobbyist to profitable.
Yep.
And we didn't like it was a kind of a cliff there where, again, like I also didn't make a profit on any of the TO work that I did at that time period, but the seeds are being planted there for like that level of professionalism at the very least. And the resistance, I think, from a lot of the legacy FGC at that time was because, and this I think happens in any hobby. From what I was talking to my wife about her involvement with the Renaissance Fair, there's always like this cliff moment where the community goes from feeling like a community to going corporate. And we've lamented on this show time and time again about the corporatization of the FGC. But so I think it's like a really strong point to see that like you two are trying to like ride that middle ground era where it's like it still needed to be community oriented, but it also didn't need to be so lax that everything was running late. It wasn't a group of buddies hanging out, and it wasn't quite a corporation, but it was like the sweet spot for a community, I think.
It was literally a combination, like I said, total admin business background. That's how I had to run a tournament. I literally had to think of it like that, where, okay, I've got a timeline, I've got this amount of games, I have this amount of people. I'm grateful for, which was the platform we used that we started out with?
Like running brackets and stuff?
Yeah.
Challenge?
I think at that point it was still Challenge.
Yeah, it was still Challenge.
Yeah, because like the only other thing that we ever ran on back then was this thing called TO that was like an offline thing, but we never used that.
Yeah, we never used that. So Benny had to teach me how to use that. So that he could actually be a player. So it was a learning thing for me. You are going through all the oh my god. But I think that's why it worked. it's not that I didn't have the player mentality, but I had the business aspect to make it run properly, I guess.
Okay. That makes sense. I like again, it's like that fine line though, because if you push it too corporate, you push people away, which it
You
sounds like
push
that
a
didn't
lot
happen,
of
right?
people away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think for the most part, like I think people realize like, our intentions were good and it was like, and at the end of the day, I mean that's all you can kind of really rely on, right? Is people to trust you and to know that what you're doing is for them as well, right? It's
Sure.
not like I'm here to make a profit, I'm here to, to squeeze money out of you guys. It's like no, like I just want to run shit on time and I want to get back to my family and and that kind of thing.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
The whole there's a hidden aspect on why I also wanted to um, integrate or involve our family as much as possible before um, before Jabin, Benny and I had a rough patch. Like all marriages do, don't kid yourself.
yeah, John, Mr. Newlywed.
Yeah.
We're 20, almost 21 years in it, 22 years together. We had a rough patch, and when I realized how passionate Benny was in Street Fighter, in competitive gaming, I literally had to make the um I don't want to say moral choice or anything like that, but I had to make a choice for our relationship. And
Okay.
I remember Street Fighter when it was on, what was it, NES?
No, SNES.
SNES, sorry. Which my favorite character at that time was Chun.
It's a good character.
Well, yeah, I started
Still
out
a good character.
Yeah.
with Chun, and then later, I don't even remember which version it was. Then I went to Cammy, and then it's kind of stuck with Cammy. But you know what? Whatever. I have an affinity for blondes. I'll admit that.
When I think of Benny, the first thing I think of is blonde. Yeah.
Oh man!
If only
To
I
be
could.
to be fair, I never had that whole Asian frosted tip face. That was never me.
Yeah, no,
That was never me.
He's done the bowl cut.
Yeah.
I have proof of the bowl cut, but
Hey, that was like when I was like 8 years old though. That's different. That's like a mom and dad kind of thing.
proof of the bowl cut. But I can
Oh,
tell
man.
you from at least from freshman year to senior year, Benny has never had the hair long enough to do that.
Yeah, that's when I started shaving my head.
So the rough patch that y'all mentioned was getting involved with Street Fighter was kind of like to get closer to Benny and understand his hobbies a little bit better, or is that kind of the motivation, or?
It was, that's part of the motivation. The rough patch kind of just it taught me a lesson on communication and realizing that we're growing people, we're growing individuals. We have different aspirations and everything, so I wanted to take that step to be like, all right, well, this is a Benny I don't know, so if I don't want to have difficulties in our relationship, let's learn it, let's get to know it, let's figure it out, if we can accept it, if we can't accept it. I'm pretty sure a lot of spouses, partners, girlfriends go through this, even boyfriends, like
Yeah.
whatever relationship. You have to realize you have to get yourself involved. You have to learn it. You can't just deadpan it and be like, no, gamers are dumb,
Yeah.
I'm out. That's not fair.
Yeah.
Really. It really isn't fair. And I still get a lot of flack from friends and whatever about him being a gamer. And I'm like, you know what? It keeps him home. He's he's active mentally in something, he's active socially in something. What more can I ask for? He's not an alcoholic, he's not a drug addict. It's
Sure.
gaming.
Yeah, I mean, let's see that to be fair too. Like, she's always known like I've been a gamer, but for us, like this was a whole different aspect because like instead of sitting at home playing Halo 2 on Xbox Live while I'm watching, while I have my daughter in like a what they call it, the
Little
brace thing, right?
snuggie.
Yeah, like they used to have the sort of like harness thing that I would wear, and I would literally sit on the couch and she's sitting on she's against me on my chest, and I'm playing Halo 2 or whatever.
Sure.
This was a whole different thing because now I had to go out and it was just like, hey, there's these tournaments I want to go to. There's this whole community that I want to be involved in and stuff like that. And it's
Mhm.
like I said, like when we started doing the tournaments, it wasn't a matter of like we were gonna drop our kids off. Like it just kind of naturally came to us that hey, Mary's gonna be there to help me run things anyway, and it's just like the kids are gonna be there too. And like I know people would probably be worried about that in terms of like kids being rowdy and like being interruptive and stuff to people that were playing in the things, but like our kids have never been like that. I mean, we get people all the time, even in restaurants, like, "Oh, your kids are so well behaved," and I'm just like, "What are you expecting?" And I guess I think they're just used to kids climbing over the booths and screaming and stuff like that. And our kids are usually pretty well mannered and and just do their own thing and behave themselves. So it's like that
Oh,
was never a problem for people in the community. Like, yeah, eventually, like as they got used to like the players and stuff, you'd see them kind of like walk up to people or be interested in kind of like what they were doing and that kind of thing. But it never became like a disruption. So they kind of just were kind of just integrated into the community, and people were just used to seeing them. When we'd host events, and it was just like, oh, there's the kids. You know what I mean?
Sure.
and people were really supportive once Kaya and Maymay wanted to play more games. Like Kaya started to love Tekken of all things.
Yeah,
And we'd get her own station and she'd just be trying out things. Her favorite character is King.
yeah.
It has not changed.
Nice.
Um, uh, and then, May May slowly getting into games. They loved it when they would see uh, our little G crawling and then like pick up a stick because people would, leave their
stuff
stick
around.
somewhere and he'd just crawl up to it and start, wiggling and messing with the buttons because that's what he saw his dad do and many others. Um, so, and everybody was supportive. Nobody got mad at him for touching their stick or, you know, um, them crawling around or some of them even tried to give the kids little tips here and there when they were just, messing around and playing Tekken
Aw.
or sometimes Street Fighter, and they were like, "Oh, you could do this," and
Yeah,
or I'd catch some of the players actually have my daughters sit on their lap, have the stick on the lap, and try and hold their little hands to kind of show them the movements. Then I'm like, "Oh, that's what we do. This is what I want to see and experience, um,
yeah,
and show that you know you players are more than just your arcade sticks, hitboxes. Um,
yeah.
you guys are more than that. You know.
Sure.
Yeah, and then I wanted to go back to kind of her point about having a supportive partner because like that's something that I've heard about in throughout the years, whether it was in Alaska or whether it was in Arizona, because like same kind of thing happened when we moved to Arizona. Like my kids would eventually come with me to the tournaments. Mary would show up every now and then, after work or whatnot, and like um, I've always been told a lot, like, "Oh man, you're so lucky that she's supportive of what you do." And like, I don't know if that stems from like animosity that they get at home, like she was saying from their significant others, or
Or
maybe it was
even
their
parents.
parents or something like that. Just like, "Oh, what are you doing? Oh, you're wasting your time." Blah blah blah, right? And it's just like I said, like she was used to me being a gamer, but this was a different thing. And it's just like I've always considered myself extremely fortunate to have somebody that was supportive of it. And it's just like you don't have to necessarily be integrated in the community. Like I don't think that that's necessary at all. And I mean, I think all in all, like it's a general kind of like relationship thing, and not just like a romantic relationship. It could be a friendship thing too, right? Like I've always been big on kind of telling our kids like don't change who you are to try to like fit in, right? Like if you love Smash Brothers, then whatever, love Smash Brothers, and you're gonna find somebody else that loves that and that you can find equal ground on, right? And like you shouldn't have to be like, well, I don't want you to play that anymore. Well, why is that a thing? Like why does that need to be a thing? Why can't you just be supportive of that and then also have your own kind of thing or some other common ground that you guys can follow on?
Sure.
Guys, I'm so supportive. Benny ran not even a tournament, but we had no, I guess it wasn't like a mini tournament on my birthday at the house. We had a gathering. Benny's like, I really want to do this. Would you mind if I had some of the guys over? And he was like,
That was on your birthday. I know we did something
It
on
was
my
on my
birthday.
birthday.
I did something on my birthday.
it was winter, honey.
So it wasn't
People were
for
coming
your
to our
birthday,
house.
it was just on your birthday?
It was on my birthday.
Oh.
So I told him, I was like, fine, you can invite everybody, but you have to let them know they have to wish me a happy birthday. And I cooked. Again, that was another little
Oh, yeah, that was another thing that we
family tidbit thing that
we did at events. Yeah,
during our events. I would cook something.
yeah. Typically adobo. It was like we'd bring a whole rice cooker and she'd have like a huge pot of adobo.
It's the easiest thing to make.
People were like, "Oh man, we get food."
Mm-hmm. Everybody got a rice bowl of adobo, and they could have seconds if they wanted to. It's I guess I also had that mentality of like, well, if I'm hosting someone, I'm gonna host someone. And again, our community was so young. I felt kind of bad that they're here for hours on end, but they can't leave to get anything to eat.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think that is kind of where things stem
Mhm.
from because we were just like we don't want people to leave, but at the same time, like the venue didn't really have anything either, right? They had like chips and typical
monsters, I
yeah
think.
typical stuff like that. So it's just like, well, I don't want to like we don't want to just force people to stay here and have to eat junk food.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think a lot of the tone of the stories and like what we talked about up until this point have been about like your contributions to the community and in some ways justifying your contributions to the community, and how you've helped the community. And I would like to kind of turn that notion on its head here and ask, like, Mary, did you like what did the community do for you, or like what did you get out of all this? Like, did it help give you some insight? Was it just warm and fuzzies, or was it a friend? It looks like you got a whole new friend network here based on this picture that I've got shown on the screen. It's the second one
Oh
you sent me,
yeah.
Benny. That's
Yeah,
the YouTube thumbnail. If I ever saw it, I could use both of these, one for part one and one for part two.
Yeah. Yeah, so
But yeah,
the first photo I sent you, yeah, that was like the whole kind of like the shirt thing that we were talking about,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
The community
You don't
aspect.
have the one where I'm wearing the only red shirt.
I'd have to find that photo.
I actually printed mine as the only red shirt, so
Oh,
everybody else is blue.
Yeah, I'll probably find that one. I'll send that to you separately.
but so yeah, my question was ultimately like, what were you getting out of this, or how did the community help you at all, or did you benefit from having those folks in your life?
So a little bit of my background. I come from a very large family, but so socially it was just my family. I'm pretty much, in my mom's eyes, such an introvert that I had no friends throughout school, which is not true. I just didn't mix school with home. So coming into the community, it helped me socially come out of my shell,
Okay.
be a little more confident in myself, as a person, as an organizer, as a leader in a community. Because at some point doing all this, I had so many people kind of come up to me and ask me questions about life, about gaming, about this and that, and it puts you in a spot you don't even realize you fit into.
Like a mentorship kind of role.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's also where I learned I don't like being a teacher, but I can be a mentor.
I think that's in corporate America. I see that as people want to, like, people would mentor, but not necessarily be a manager, right? You don't want to get promoted to that kind of track per se. Had you had any prior experience in being part of a community or like a hobbyist community or anything like that?
So aside from the large family, I was very big in choir.
Okay.
Throughout middle school, high school, church choir. Singing was a huge portion of my life.
Mhm.
And Filipino dancing. Did a lot of dancing.
Fair enough. I'm sure
Um,
Benny was on the floor with you the whole time, right?
No. This
Yeah.
was cultural dancing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Benny's the one that actually started the trend for for Filipinos. Our native tribes are called Igrots, and their traditional wear is a very long loincloth.
Okay.
And I was in a pinch for one of our community performances, and well, Benny came because I invited him, and I was like, "We're short a player. I need you to get dressed."
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, granted, this was at a performing arts center. This is at the Anchorage Performing Arts Center.
Yeah, this is
I was backstage.
community
Yeah, I
event.
was backstage, and they were just like, "This is something that her family did." Like, I was just like, I was literally pretty much just an observer. I was there. This is like when we were first dating, and then yeah, she was just like,
Oh,
"Hey,
you
we
were
need
dating
somebody
at the
else."
time too. Okay.
Yeah.
We were dating, and
Yeah.
not even that long.
Yeah, we
by
were.
the way.
Yeah, it wasn't that long, and then they was just like, "Yeah, we need you to fill in," and I'm like, "What?"
This is something out of a sitcom, I swear.
And so that day Benny was actually commando, so everybody was like, "You're not wearing anything?" And I was like, "You're not wearing anything?" And he's like, "No." And I'm like, "Oh, well." And then my mom was like, "Well, he's gonna wear it traditionally." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And so, which I guess had to be awkward because it was my mom that actually dressed him.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. There's all kinds of firsts, it sounds like, as part of this
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so like, yeah,
First
like
time your
said,
future mother-in-law seen your junk, I guess.
I think I was covered enough, but it was funny because like her other family members weren't, they would typically just leave their undergarments on, so they would kind of like show through
Trying to roll it up.
Yeah, they try to
The
roll it up.
boxer briefs.
Boxer briefs and stuff would like show through, and I just, I don't even remember what was going on at that time. That I just happened to be that way, and it was just like, so like, yeah, I just remember it, the getting dressed by my future mother-in-law, and then having to go out on that stage, and it was, I think if I remember right, I had to take my glasses off, so I couldn't really,
You couldn't
I'm blinded
see.
from that. I couldn't see anything. So
This
like
is
there
out
was
of a
no,
sitcom, dog. They'll
yeah, so
like
like
recast it with a bunch of white actors, and it'll be a
yeah,
high school
there
dance
was
or
like,
something
so there was like
instead.
there was a level of nervousness at the same time, but at the same time, like I couldn't see the crowd, and it was more just kind of like a lot of like their traditional dances are like, kind of follow like a line kind of thing. So I was just part of the line, and I was just following whoever was in front of me and just kind of going with
And
that.
he's trying to coordinate hitting a gong, a big brass gong, while following my other male relatives.
Yeah. So like I just remember kind of looking out there and just kind of seeing people, but like obviously I couldn't see any faces and seeing lights and just being on that stage.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
Mm-hmm. So yes,
So there's a background in supporting each other in one another in your hobbies. It sounds like
one way or another.
Yeah, very unique and impactful ways, I think.
Oh, we were in a 4th of July parade and we were walking back to our car. And again, Benny's in costume. And I don't know if the wind hit it just right, but a little kid was like, "Oh my God, I can see his butt cheeks." And he has the nickname of, because one of my relatives took pictures and we were seeing all the pictures on the TV screen. My uncle literally has nicknamed my husband Holy Butt because his photo came on the screen and his words were "Holy Butt," and now that's Benny.
If you had asked me what this episode would be like today, I would not have said Benny's bare ass. But
I didn't know that was gonna come up either. But in the grand scheme of things, it does, like you said, it does kind of go into the same thing with being supportive of each other's communities.
Yeah, and I do think that there's something really poignant about, like, because I think a lot of people, particularly in their late 20s or maybe even early 30s, at least I remember experiencing that as well, where I'm like, oh, I'm not the youngest generation that's I'm not the main character anymore, right? And there's a point where I was like, oh, I actually do have some things that I can share with people who are younger than me, and people do actually feel that they could benefit from something that I've experienced. And I feel like that I also got that same kind of vibe from the FGC, and it was also my first time in any kind of leadership role, so I very much relate to the idea of being antisocial growing up. And I'm not saying you were, but I was, and then being put into a leadership position or having the opportunity at it, and then having a welcoming family of a community be willing to nurture that skill. And then that's those skills that it takes to actually lead a community and to run a tournament and then get people to listen to you and deal with all the friction that we discussed on the show prior, Yep. That's deeper. That's a much deeper thing than just like air quotes coming out of your shell, like it's like on the journey of self-actualization, I think.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Like, and again, like, though I have all this experience being in choir or, with my family doing our cultural dancing, my mom was the leader. I was just following. So having the leadership role in the fighting game community was so new to me.
Sure.
But it was, it helped out because then later my mom, I guess it showed my mom I could be a leader, even though she didn't know what I was doing. I've always been my mom's go-to person. So I've had to take leadership roles, but nothing on that scale.
Yeah, it's the difference between big sister versus team mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. I found the other photo. Yeah, so hold on, I'll send that to you real quick. That's the one that she was talking about in terms of having the one red shirt.
All right,
so you can use that one for the first one.
Because I'm the.
And then, yeah, I mean, all in all, like, the other photo, the other photo I sent you, which I think we'll use for the second part, that was their last day in Alaska before they ended up moving down to Arizona. I guess there was everybody from the community showed up. So at this point, I'm already gone. I'm in Arizona for about a month, 3 weeks or so, and this was their last day in Alaska. They went to the Friendly Fire venue, and that's basically the whole, the majority, if not all, of the AKG community at that point, saying their goodbyes and stuff to them and to to my family. So
yeah, I forgot who reached out to me and let me know that they were running something, because they knew that we weren't sugarcoating it. Benny's there. This is you. This is
this is the last day.
This is the last tournament we did to say goodbye.
Oh yeah, this is right. Sorry, that I got that all mixed up. Yeah, so this is the last tournament that I ran before I left, because I left basically the next week, like on the 19th.
Which one are you talking about? The red shirt picture?
The group photo. No,
The
no,
group
no.
photo
This is the big group
with the
photo.
dog in it. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, with the dog. Yeah, Baltazar.
Okay.
So, yeah, that was March 11, 2012. That was the last tournament that I ran. I think it was called March Mash Fest. It was kind of a play on March Madness. Um, and I think this is the last tournament I held before I left.
And then
So-
everybody wanted to run Benny through a gauntlet.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
Kumite.
remember
I
that.
see.
Yeah.
hmm
Yeah, like I said that, and everybody was just like, "All right, we're just gonna play games."
Excuse me. I think one thing we kind of glossed over was like how involved your kids were in in all these tournaments through different eras, and obviously they grew up, like you could, in the time frame that you guys were running tournaments, like that is a significant portion of a kid's life. Like I think like in the picture that we got shown on the screen here, like Kaya and Mei Mei look very, very young, very different than they do now. Mary, you haven't aged at all. I just think that's Asian genes, I think. But
Oh, yeah.
I was curious about, like, do you think that exposing your kids to a community like this of like early adults, or like, teenagers even, like, what were the pros and cons of that, I guess? Like, to their development.
That's a
Honestly,
good question.
wow.
Anytime I throw the
In
word
a
phrase pros and
sense-
cons at somebody, it's a little bit of a mind teaser. So.
Well, see,
And-
yeah. Well, see, I mean, to just jump in here briefly, like I would say maybe the cons would be kind of like, because they're in that kind of teenage young adult phase, is possibly them seeing, devices that they're, smoking or stuff like that. Not that, that's not anything that me and her would do, but that's definitely something that people in the community would do.
So
Did
a
they
lot
ever
of
like learn
people,
bad words from the community and stuff? That's the kind
Oh
of
no,
stuff.
they learned that from going around Call of
That's me.
Duty.
That's me. That's 100% me. That's why whenever
Ah,
like
okay.
we were at the venues at TGC, and somebody would be like, "Oh shit," and like, "Oh man, I'm sorry, your kids are here." And I was like, "Oh, don't worry about it, man. It's fine. They've heard it all before."
Oh, there was one time, I don't remember who I was talking to, but Kaya literally told somebody "F you," and I was like, all of us kind of went silent real quick, and I'm like, I'm gonna kill your dad. And I literally had to scold Kaya and be like, honey, we don't say that to people. And she's like, oh, well, dad says it. And I'm like, yeah, but dad says that through a microphone, not
through a microphone
directly. Well, and then not directly at someone.
It's
face to
just
face.
Xbox Live, Kaya. It's just Xbox
Right?
Live.
So,
Jeez.
and a lot of the teenagers would bring their girlfriends, so they were learning about romantic relationships, I guess.
Okay.
It's not necessarily a con, but it is something you kind of have to address to somebody who's all like, are they together?
Oh yeah,
Are
who's
they
that? Or
together?
like,
Yeah.
or that person wouldn't be around anymore, and they're just like, "Hey, where's so and so?"
Mhm.
Like,
And
yeah.
they'd be like, oh, that's a sore spot.
Oh man, okay.
Because some of the girlfriends would love playing with the girls, and then next thing you know, in like a
They're
week
gone,
or
right?
two,
Yeah.
or next
Yeah.
month, they're like, oh, where's so and so? And the guys would have to be like, well, they didn't want to come
Yeah.
this time. It,
Had to navigate around that. man.
there's, I think the girls, having them kept the community more on their toes about more social aspects
Okay.
because they were so young. It's totally different when you have a room of everybody being around the same age ish, because then other profanities hit and are said or done or whatever. But a
Sure.
lot of guys were very respectful. They weren't saying, hey, I'm gonna go take a leak or blah blah blah. They'd be like, oh, I'm gonna go use the restroom. I'm gonna go take a break, instead of saying, I'm gonna go light a joint or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, they're having the girls actually, and even Jabin in a little car seat, whatnot, it literally made them more mature.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Um,
it basically kind of like grounds them. It's like
yeah.
you kind of have to be, everybody, you're supposed to, I mean, I think for most normal people, like you have that kind of different face, like, I'm in front of my family, I'm in front of, I'm at work kind of thing, right? And it was kind of
Mhm.
like, in a way, kind of forcing them into that other kind of phase instead of just, being with the boys kind of thing. And we're hanging out at one of our buddies' houses and, just doing whatever.
Yeah. So I can't, there weren't really any cons, honestly.
Yeah.
The pro is all of us kind of just grew to be a very supportive community. Like if I couldn't keep my eyes on the girls, I always knew somebody had my back.
Yeah.
Um, Same thing with G, because G would love to just crawl anywhere and
Yeah.
everywhere. So, one of the guys would always like pick him up and like, hey, you can't go there. Somebody's, in a match or whatever. And they'd bring him by to
Yeah.
where I was sitting
Put them
or,
on the couch or something.
yeah.
Yeah.
Aw.
They'd always, everybody always had eyes on the kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Do you think that your
so,
kids learned any valuable lessons from being part of it? Like you mentioned, it grounded them, right? But like anything like super tangible or like any, I guess, stories that involved like something they learned at the arcade that you're like, oh, or not the arcade, but they must have learned this from a local, or must have learned this
Yeah.
from
I don't
somebody in the
know.
fighting game
That's
community.
actually a good question. Maybe I should just put them on the spot one day.
that's
We could
more of a
interview them on the
personal thing
show.
for them.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe I'll ask them and see what they
I
have
can,
to say.
I can say now that they don't see the community as a separate part of themselves.
Yeah, because
Okay.
it was like other than this, like they've been to Evos. Like they've come with us into the Evo halls.
Benny can send you the
They were
pictures.
even put on ESPN at one point at 2016.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
yeah, like they were basically one of them was, I think it was G sleeping on the floor and
No,
like.
all three of them were asleep. Maymay was
Oh
sitting on the
yeah,
wall.
I
Kaya was
remember that
sleeping.
No, that
picture.
was
Yeah, yeah.
that was a different one. That was the one at the
Oh,
Bally's.
was
Oh,
that?
Yeah, the one at that was the one that ended up on Facebook because somebody was
okay.
just like, I think one of them was sleeping and they were just like, oh, FGC, blah blah blah.
Right, it was Javen on
Yeah,
ESPN.
the one on ESPN was like it was in the, I remember it because it was on like the convention floor of 2016, and
Uh-huh.
they were, I think Kai and Mimi were doing something, drawing or playing on their DSs or something, and G was sleeping or laying down, and there was like a kind of a top down photo, and then I
Sure.
remember somebody pointed out and was just like, oh shit, it's on ESPN. Obviously, it's like gone now. Like I don't know where it's at, but yeah, that was kind of a crazy thing to see, but um, I don't know. Like yeah, they've been at the local events, the events in AZ. They were the if you went to the second Rewired, I mean they were part of the helping around with the first Rewired in Tucson. If
Hmm.
you're at the second one, you saw everyone because Mary and the kids were at the front desk, literally like helping people with registration and badges and selling balls and T-shirts and stuff like that.
We were, yeah.
Balls by sense the energy drink balls. If you don't know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, forgot about that.
Yeah, so if you went to the second Rewired that Nick Going and Justin held, they were the ones at the front of the registration desk doing all of that stuff.
Sure. And I remember at that time, like it was like a community service thing too, right? Like they could get school credit or something for it.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That
it
and that
really
was the
did
day
get
like I
woven
ran
into
like
their day-to-day lives. That's fascinating.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Our family that was a crazy day for everybody. That's the day I could run like 8 brackets.
Man.
I
Yeah.
don't even really think I saw you.
No, I was too busy like running brackets, and then I had to play, and then that's the day I beat Ernest and everything, and like everything was kind of a blur. Like I was just busy that whole day.
But
So
yeah. Nope.
another question I have here in regards to like the just general support of relationship kind of deal here. Was there ever a moment where, Mary, for you, this became like this was no longer just Benny's thing anymore? Does it still feel like Benny's thing, or does it feel like yours as well?
I think from the moment Benny gave me my tag, I literally just called it Benny's thing. Um, well, no, I guess before that, I called it my thing the moment the moment I decided to reach out into the community to be like, hey, I want to run a tournament. How do I do it?
Okay.
And I got my answers. And then because again, we're a supportive unit, I had to involve Benny because Benny was the one having the same complaints as me. I was just voicing them a little louder
Okay.
between us.
So that early on,
But
you were like, this is my show as well. It's not just I'm being a supportive spouse. It is like Queen Bee is a member of the community.
Oh, I admitted how controlling I can be. So
This is my community then. I see.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's that many who would actually not say it isn't. But that was a funny thing because I forget which I think it was like our second or third tournament. One of the players was just like, so what do we call you? And I'm like, and then that's when Penny was all like, she's Queen Bee.
Yeah. So this that has nothing to do with like Beyonce and that kind of stuff. I know that's what a lot of people would think. And then like when it came to the FGC, some people were just like, "Oh, do you like Queen Bee and Darkstalkers, Vampire Savior?" And I was like, "No, it has nothing to do with that either." And they're like, "Well, what is it from then?" And I was like, "Well, I'm Grandmaster Bee, and this is my wife." So it just naturally came to me like, "Oh, this is gonna be the Queen Bee." So that's
So
kind of where that came from.
all right, we got there. We got to how she got her gamer tag. That's one question out of the
Yeah.
way for the podcast. We're an hour and 20 minutes.
I wanted to get it in there because you were like, wait, how did we? Yeah.
I was thinking about that too. I was like, man, we never even like touched on that.
I got it.
But that's awesome.
I got you.
Yeah.
That might actually be a good spot for us to end part one here. So thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll be back a week from now when the next half of this episode airs. I'll ask for shout outs in the second part. So no shout outs this time around. But so this has been the Absolute Guard Podcast, episode 83, part 1 with John, Benny, and Mary. You can find us on Twitch at twitch.tv/Spiral Series, YouTube at youtube.com/Spiral Series, and Apple Podcasts and Spotify under Absolute Guard. We'll see you in part 2.